we're practicing today, we're not going to see a result of for years,
Mhm.
potentially.
Right.
But that's why they're so important, because when you practice them with consistency and commitment for long enough, you can ultimately get results in your life that maybe you didn't even believe were possible. But it starts with having that potentially challenging conversation with yourself of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how aligned
Right.
are my habits with who I want to be in the
Right.
future?
Mhm.
Really is the question. So habits are everything. If you see someone who has positive habits and you had money to bet on whether or not they would succeed, you'd probably say yes. But
Right.
on the opposite end, if you knew somebody who had a bunch of bad habits, you probably wouldn't bet on them achieving their quote unquote dream life, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. This is Sheila's Take, a podcast where you can hear my take on everything: love, hate, relationships, family, and today's issues with a godly perspective. I'm your host, Sheila Dunbar. Thank you for joining me. Welcome back to Sheila's Take, where I uncover personal stories of triumph and transformation. On today's episode, I am honored to have Kevin Palmieri, the CFO, founder, and co host of Next Level University, joining us. With over 1,500 episodes and a global audience spanning over 160 countries, Kevin's podcast has made a significant impact in the realm of self improvement. Kevin's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and holistic self improvement. Despite having it all on the surface, he discovered the harsh realities of a rock bottom. It was from this place of deep despair that he embarked on a transformative quest to overcome his anxiety, depression, and live a life aligned with his dreams. So grab your favorite beverage, lean in, and prepare to be inspired by Kevin's profound insights on today's episode. Welcome, Kevin. How are you?
Sheila, I'm living the dream. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the kind words, and I am excited to chat with you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you share more about your personal journey from a low point in your life to becoming a successful podcast host and coach in the self improvement space?
Yeah, I often say that my life has been a bit of a roller coaster ride. So I started at very humble beginnings. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I
Mm,
didn't I
okay.
didn't meet my dad until I was 27. So that was the start. And I decided not to go to college. It just didn't make sense to me. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm not going to pay somebody to help me figure out what I want to do with my life.
Right.
So I ended up working these odd jobs. I worked at a gas station, personal trainer, truck driver, forklift operator, cleaned bathrooms and floors at a hospital, many things. I did many,
Wow.
many, many different things. Yeah. In my early 20s, this is when I found quote unquote success.
Mm,
So I got a job in an industry called weatherization. And all that means is we go into large buildings and we make them more energy efficient through retrofitting the building. Easiest way to explain it.
okay. Okay.
I went from making like $15 an hour at a construction job to $60 an hour
Doing
at
that?
this. Yeah, at this new job. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think the most I ever made was, I think I made $120 an hour on one of the job sites we were working at. So for me, I was convinced I found my thing.
Hmm.
This is it. I not going to college, that was the right play. This is amazing. Everything's awesome. If you saw me when I was 25, you would see a young man who had a really good job.
Hmm.
I had just competed in and won a bodybuilding show. So I had bodybuilding trophies that said I was in shape. So I was in the best shape I've ever been in and I will ever
Right.
be in for sure. My girlfriend at the time was a model.
Wow.
I was
Look
living
like
the
you
dream.
had it all,
I
right?
was living the dream. She had a nice car, all the stuff. But
Wow. Okay.
internally, I was a shell of myself. I was insecure. I was uncertain. I was afraid of my own shadow. I just was not whole. I was struggling. I was struggling way worse than anybody understood.
Hmm.
My girlfriend left me because it's very hard to pour into somebody else's cup when your cup is just
Yeah.
then empty. So she left.
Hmm.
I was miserable. I convinced myself that if I just went and made a boatload more money, all of my problems would go away. I spent the next year living on the road, living in hotels because most of
Hmm.
our jobs were in other states. made $100,000 that year. I made the most money I had ever made up until that point. And then I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide the next year because I was just so miserable and I felt stuck and I felt trapped. And it was just brutal. I was so afraid to start over. I was so afraid to lose my reputation. I
Mhm.
was so afraid to look like a failure. So in 2018, I ended up leaving that job and then starting I already had the podcast,
Mhm.
going full time into the podcast and getting 0 results for the first several years,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Mhm. How how old were you at this time?
When I left my job, I was 20, I think I was 27,
Wow.
27 or 28.
So that was a lot in us in at a very young age. I mean,
Yeah, I hit my midlife crisis. I call it my quarter life crisis. I had a quarter life crisis, so I'm grateful it happened early because I've had a lot of time to build from there.
wow, yeah. Um, what are some key strategies or practices that helped you overcome anxiety and depression and start living the life you dreamed of?
Yeah, that's always a hard question because I don't know that I think I'm more the exception than the rule when it comes to
Mhm.
this. So, just as an example, my depression went away when I left my job. Like,
Ah,
it
okay.
left. I mean, have I had moments,
Mhm.
minor moments? Yeah, nothing like that though. So, that's one thing. The anxiety thing for me, I have worked really hard at trying to sustainably get outside of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
Is the best way for me to explain it. But my anxiety might be different than yours, whether you're watching or listening. It
Mm,
might show up in a different way. It might manifest in a different way.
right.
But for me, getting outside of my comfort zone and then proving to myself that a lot of my overthinking was coming from uncertainty. And the more I get outside my comfort zone, the more I experience, the more I grow, the more I
Mm,
evolve, the more
yeah.
certain I become. I have always, I've tried to liken it to when you build strength in the vessel, the external world affects you a little bit less.
Mhm.
That's kind of been my thought with this, but I don't know if that's really all. I went from having really bad panic attacks to I haven't had a panic attack in I don't know how many years. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
The best thing I can point to is working really diligently on self-improvement and self-awareness
Yeah.
and mindfulness, but also understanding that when I get outside of my comfort zone, I think it helps me deal with uncertainties more effectively is what I
Well,
would say.
I have suffered from anxiety.
Mm,
I'm more of the second guess worrier. You
mm,
know,
mhm,
I would worry about if I had a conversation with someone and how I reacted to that conversation, and it would lean on me and bother me and get in my head and say, well, maybe you should have done this, and if you said it this way, then this would have happened, and this would have happened, and
mhm,
this would have happened, and this would have happened, and I realize within myself, and like you said, it's different for everyone else, but I realized within myself when I started doing a little bit more um self-evaluation and looking at who I am and
mm,
how I react to certain things and taking a step back and taking a breath and not always just shooting off and coming off right at the point when I hear something, but just taking a breath, thinking about it. We always say this, and I say this, to my we say this to kids, but I say it to mine, think before you speak, right?
mm, yeah,
And
yeah,
and excuse me, and that's important because a lot of times for me, that was my issue. I would always say something and then I regret it later, or I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, and maybe I
mm,
should have said this, or I've started this thing. I'm in the year of no. I'm not afraid. I want to I'm trying to build Sheila and do things right for Sheila. So I don't feel bad when tell someone no,
yeah,
because again, you said it. You cannot pour into someone else if your cup is empty. So if
mhm,
you're constantly doing a bunch of things that don't make you happy and you're doing it anyway, you're going to be you're unhappy, you're not going to be a good person to be around.
mhm,
So
yeah.
I definitely, I definitely agree with you on that. But
It's what you said, Sheila, is super powerful.
Mhm.
when we convince ourselves that we can't do something because we're afraid of it, and then I think we actually get more afraid of it.
Yeah.
I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
If if the thing that you're anxious about hasn't happened to you yet, it might serve you if it does.
If it
I'm not telling you to go
Mhm.
seek the pain.
Yeah.
One of as a speaker, as somebody who trains people, speaks, coaches, one of my biggest fears is bombing a speech.
Yeah. I
One of
can
the best, right? One of the best things that ever happened to me was bombing a speech
really.
because I realized it wasn't as bad as I expected. The anxiety, I think, is the uncertainty for a lot
Mhm.
of us.
Right. Right.
So I bombed a speech and I rewatched it, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. In the moment, I thought it was the worst thing ever of all time.
Right.
I made the kids do push-ups because I like ran out of stuff to say. So I said, "Who wants to come do push-ups with me?" That's how bad it got. It was bad. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. But how do we know how we will react to something unless we experience it?
Exactly.
Exposure therapy. If you're afraid of heights, you will be afraid of heights forever unless you
Mhm.
go to where you're not or you're just a little bit afraid and then you move up, you move up, you move up. I think that's a really good analogy for life. Now, is that going to fix anxiety? I don't know.
Mm.
That has definitely helped me with
Mhm.
overthinking and uncertainty. But last thing I'll say on this rant, one of the things that I realized about myself is a lot of my anxiety comes from disappointing people because that's my core wound.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's it for me. If I disappoint you, that will wreck my day. If we get off here, go
Yeah.
ahead.
It's see for me it is I don't want to disappoint you. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
always in my head. I don't want to disappoint you. So yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
yeah.
And it just it gets to be overwhelming,
Mm,
because you're trying to not disappoint someone, but in the turn you're giving yourself the short end of the stick because
yeah,
you're not happy, but you're trying to make someone else happy.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're disappointing yourself so you don't disappoint
Exactly.
someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. I very, very, very much. That's a newer realization for me how much that has controlled me.
Yeah, and it's something that it takes a while to understand and get out of. You were talking about bombing in your speech and being afraid, and this podcast was birthed out of me being afraid.
Mm,
I was told, I just do it afraid because if you do it, it's in your spirit to do it. God has put it in your spirit to do it, but if you're holding it back,
yeah.
who's it helping? If
Mm,
you're afraid, do it afraid. Get out of your comfort zone and do it. And like again, this is my second season now. I did it. I was afraid. And I'm like, well, what if no one listens? Okay, well, you know what? Someone will listen. I have to do things that's gonna scare me, and that will get me past it. And like you said, you realize, oh wow, it wasn't that bad. I
it's a whole new world. It's a
right.
whole new world. I'm somebody who's terrified of flying,
Hmm.
and I convinced myself for a long time I just didn't like traveling. It was
Yeah.
just easier to say I don't like traveling
Right.
rather than like I'm terrified of flying.
Hmm.
But if I don't ever get on a plane, I'm never gonna get more comfortable with a plane,
Right.
ever.
Hmm.
So that was what it was for me is, okay, I had an opportunity to go to London with one of my friends, and I was like,
Hmm.
"I am so afraid to do this," but that led to me being able to go to fly to speeches and fly to get married, and that never would have happened if I didn't face that initial fear.
Exactly. Exactly. Can you share some insights on the importance of consistency and commitment and forming positive habits when you want to achieve personal growth and success?
When I think of let's just say when I think of consistency, the analogy I always use is the splits. So if Sheila and I had a conversation right now, and Sheila said, "I'll give you $1,000,000 if you can do the splits right now," I would say, "I can't." I would get hurt. Maybe I could do it, but I wouldn't get up from it. Give me 6 months, and I bet you $1,000,000 I can do them.
Mhm.
The reason I can do them is that gives me how many opportunities to practice,
Right, right,
right?
right.
Even if we said a year, let's say, give me a year. I have 365 opportunities to practice. I'm willing to bet if I practiced every day, I'd be able to do the splits. But if I started saying, you know what, I could practice like 3 times a week, I'm
Mhm.
not going to get nearly as many reps. If I say I'm only going to practice once a week, I'm only going to get 52 opportunities to practice.
Mhm.
Would you bet on the person who practices 365 times or 52?
365.
365.
Let's face it, that's
Every
month.
single time. Yeah.
Right.
That for me is a really good representation of consistency. Consistency is you doing the right things at the right time in the right way for a long enough period of time. The unfortunate truth is, for many of us, we have done the right things and we
Right.
have done them in the right way. We just didn't do them for the right amount of time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's why we get to a certain point. We say, well, this isn't working. Let me go try something else. Well, that
Mhm.
didn't work either. Let me try something else. It's not always that we're doing the wrong thing. We're just not doing it long enough. So that's consistency. That's my view on consistency. When I think of habits now more than ever, a lot of people say, "Oh, I just have bad habits," or "It's hard for me to build habits." In
Mhm.
reality, you're not building habits, you're transitioning habits. So if you go to the drive-through every day on the way to work and you get a breakfast sandwich and a coffee, it's a potentially bad habit, you might say. You
Right.
spend $7 a day, you're eating stuff that isn't necessarily healthy for you. Cool. All you have to do is transition the habit. So I've had a lot of people say, "Well, building habits is really hard." We are designed as humans to have habits.
Mhm.
We're habitual creatures.
Right.
Your habits are so important because they are determining what your future is going to look like. But again, that's where that time thing comes in. You smoke a cigarette today, nothing happens necessarily, right? You might even like it. You might say,
Mhm.
this is
Right,
awesome. I
right.
get a little high off this nicotine." 15 years from today, you're regretting the fact that you picked up that initial cigarette.
Right.
That is habits. Habits are a delayed effect in our in our life. They're a delayed result. The habits we're practicing today, we're not going to see a result of for years,
Mhm.
potentially.
Right.
But that's why they're so important, because when you practice them with consistency and commitment for long enough, you can ultimately get results in your life that maybe you didn't even believe were possible. But it starts with having that potentially challenging conversation with yourself of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how aligned
Right.
are my habits with who I want to be in the
Right.
future?
Mhm.
Really is the question. So habits are everything. If you see someone who has positive habits and you had money to bet on whether or not they would succeed, you'd probably say yes. But
Right.
on the opposite end, if you knew somebody who had a bunch of bad habits, you probably wouldn't bet on them achieving their quote unquote dream life,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. I know I've had a bunch of bad habits, health wise and so forth. And what I've done is transition those bad habits
Yeah.
into good ones, now I'm working out regularly. I'm eating healthy as opposed to in the past where you couldn't, I used to have gym memberships and I just look at them and they just made money off of me because I'd be like, okay, that's the gym. I just passed by the gym that's the gym I pay money to. I don't go to that gym, but I
Yeah.
pay money to it, and eating unhealthy. And now it's the total opposite.
Mm.
I've transitioned those bad habits into the good ones where I'm eating healthy, I'm working out, and I feel great. So it's a mindset too. It definitely is a mindset.
Yeah.
How do you tackle issues related to the mindset, your confidence and fear in your podcast and in your coaching sessions?
Yeah, it usually starts with an identity level. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, we say, "Well, I'm not confident," or "I'm not," whatever it is. "I'm not confident, I'm not secure, I'm not
Right.
this."
Mhm.
When in reality, it usually starts way, 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 way deeper than that. So the goal is always to dig into the identity level of, well, who do you believe you are? And who has decided who you believe you are? Is it you? Did you decide? Or did something happen to you in fifth grade that then changed the course of your life? So, just as an example, when I was a freshman in high school, I lifted up my arm to ask a question. And
Mhm.
one of my friends said, "Oh my God, look at your armpit stains." And that
Mhm.
little thing affected so much of my life because I was so insecure. It
Right.
definitely hurt my confidence. I was so afraid of judgment. That awareness of, look, that was something somebody said to me in high school. There's no way I can let that run the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
can't be the person that I show up as. That awareness is super important. So at the end of the day, most of it is about asking questions.
Mm.
I love one of my favorite questions is, what does that mean about you? What does that mean about you? So I'm not confident. Okay, what does that mean about you?
Mhm.
Well, it means that I don't show up as the version of myself that I desire to. Okay, well, what does that mean about you? And you just dig and you dig and you dig and you dig.
Okay.
And then maybe eventually you get to the place where I can say, well, where do you feel confident? Well, oh, yeah, I feel confident at the gym. Okay, why? I've put a lot of time into the gym. Oh, okay. Is there any possibility that the reason you don't feel confident in these other arenas is because you haven't put that much time into them yet? Oh, maybe. Okay. And then that's a potential new awareness that we can build habits around. So it really is awareness is the opportunity for change. Responsibility
Mhm.
is you and I have a conversation and then you have more necessity because now we're in this together.
Okay.
And then commitment and consistency is at the end. Okay, what do we do from here? Okay, we're going to get outside of our comfort zone and we're going to fear chase and we're going to practice the thing that we don't think we're good enough at yet. And then we'll see how we feel over the course of a month, 2 months. How does that shift? So, awareness is everything. At the end of the day, self awareness, others awareness, I think is
Mhm.
one of the best places to start because it helps us understand our identity at a deep level.
Mm. Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about relationships.
Hmm.
They play a significant role in personal development. What advice do you have for my listeners who want to improve their relationships or build better connections with others?
If you want to find your people, you have to be yourself.
Mm,
One of the hardest things in the world is being authentic.
yeah.
Unfortunately, the thing that we desire the most is one of the hardest things. But you have to lean into who you actually are because if you want to attract
Mhm.
your people are going to resonate with the real you. So that's part 1 is get familiar with who you actually are. What are your core beliefs? What are your core aspirations? And what are your core values as a human? So that's part 1.
Okay.
The second thing I always say is if you like a certain artist, let's say you like Taylor Swift. Taylor
Mhm.
Swift's huge right now, crushing it. Where would you go to meet other Taylor Swift fans? You'd probably go to a Taylor Swift concert,
A concert,
right?
exactly.
Or you join a Facebook group,
Mhm.
or you'd go to her movie. You'd find somewhere where those
Right,
other people are going to be.
right.
I think it's the same about finding growth minded, positive people. Where would they be? Well, they'd be in a Facebook group about self improvement.
Mhm.
Awesome. They would be at this event. Awesome. They'd be at this meetup. Awesome. They'd be here, 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 right? So I think one of the things that is challenging but truthful is most people aren't just going to fall into your life. You're going to have to seek them out.
Yeah.
You're going to have to seek them out and you're going to have to put in a pretty high level of effort going and trying different places and meeting people and trying to see who connects with you and really, really connects at a deep level. That. And then if we were talking about, let's just say intimate relationships, the number one thing that has benefited me, two things, you already spoke to one. I have an analogy called pinball.
Mhm.
Don't ever say the first thing that pops into your mind when you're triggered. Ever. Don't ever say it. It's most likely not going to land.
Ah,
If
yeah.
you've ever seen Family Feud, there's a lot of bloopers on Family Feud, and the
Yeah.
reason is people say the first thing that comes to their mind.
Yeah.
That is a dangerous game. And then another thing that's been very beneficial for me is anytime my wife gives some sort of thought around maybe something she's struggling with,
Uh-huh.
I'll say, "Are you looking for strategy or are you looking for a shoulder? Are you looking for me to help you solve the problem or do you just want to vent?"
Yeah.
I'm a problem solver.
Yeah.
So normally I just would say, "Okay, this is how we fix it."
Mhm.
That's not always what the other person is looking for.
Exactly.
So that has been very beneficial. The pinball as well as the strategy or shoulder, two things that have helped me tremendously, not just in intimate relationships, but any relationship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna use that with my husband because sometimes I'm, I, I'll talk to him about something, and he'll be like, "Well, you should do this." And I'm like, "No, I don't want you to tell me what to do. I just want to vent." But then he'll be like, "Well," I'll be venting to him or saying something, and he's like, "Well," I'm like, "Well, what do you want me? What should I do? Tell me
Yeah,
what."
yeah, yeah.
To do."
Yeah.
Well,
It's
that's
a challenge. It's
it's
a challenge.
but what? So that's definitely, shoulder or strategy. I like that.
It's
Um,
simple.
and it's simple and easy. How do you address limiting beliefs and help individuals break through their self-imposed barriers?
It's the same conversation we had in the beginning. I really think our limiting beliefs are limiting to the degree that we don't push them.
You don't push them.
So having someone in your corner,
Hmm.
here's the beautiful thing. I don't have your limiting beliefs. I have my own.
Hmm.
So if you come to me and say I can't do blank because of blank, that isn't the reality I live in. I live in a different reality of, well, I can't do blank because of blank.
Right.
I can shift your perspective and say, well, why not? So it's very much the questions of, okay, just as an example, somebody I was working with a while ago had been told that she was not intelligent and
Wow.
she was too stupid to go back to school.
Wow.
Yeah, it was hardcore, hardcore. There was a lot of people in her life that just weren't positive. That was a limiting belief. I am stupid and I'm not smart enough to go to school. When in reality, all of the actual reality proved the opposite. You did really well anytime you've ever gone to school. You're a really good test taker. The only way for you to break the limiting belief is to do the thing that you're limited from doing in the first place. So she ended up going back to school and I think she got a 3.9 GPA.
Look.
3.9 out of 4 is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Now she knows that that belief was a limiting one. Next time she can check in with, is this real? Or is this fear? Is this uncertainty? Is this scarcity? Is this my ego trying to keep me safe? Is it a limiting belief? I wish it was easier. I really do. But from what I've seen, the best way to make long-term concrete change is to say, okay, this is the thing that scares me. Like you said, I have to do it scared to
Yeah.
prove to myself that it's not real. It's
Mhm.
holding me back, but it's not actually real.
Exactly. It's in your mind. It's in your
Yeah.
God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, and it's in our minds. We conjure it up, and
Yeah.
we can do this. I'm a believer in being around like-minded individuals. Because you have to be around people who have the same ambitions, the same goals, like-minded like yourself. Because if not, you'll fall into that same category as the young lady you were just referring to.
Yeah.
But she's around the wrong people, and they're telling her the wrong type of things
Mm.
for many reasons. People have their reasons for, so many things, but we don't know, especially if it's a close family member or a loved one telling you these things. They love me. Why would they lie to me?
Mm. Yeah.
So, let me ask you this. As someone who has recorded over 1,000 episodes of your podcast, what have been some key lessons or takeaways from your conversations with guests that have made a lasting impact on you?
The biggest one for me, when we first started interviewing people, we would start to hear these incredible stories of overcoming adversity.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, it was like, wow, that person's been through it. My goodness.
Yeah.
And then it was, oh, that person's been through it too. My goodness. And eventually it got to the point where the lesson was your adversity can be, it's not always, but your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to use it properly.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the people that we've had on the show, I would say most of them, have had some sort of very, very challenging thing happen to them,
Mhm.
usually beyond their control, usually beyond their choice, but it made them great in different ways. It made them unconditioned parts of themselves. It made them face certain limiting beliefs. It made them become more self-aware. Your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to spin it that way. So that's been one big lesson. And then the other big lesson that always sits with me is a lot of us think that where we are today is where we're going to be stuck forever, and we think
Right.
that where someone else is today is where they've been forever.
Right.
When in reality, a lot of it's time.
Mhm.
So we were interviewing people who have been entrepreneurs and business owners and authors and coaches for 20 years. I was only 30 years old at the time. So they've been doing this almost as long as I've been alive. Oh, okay. If
Right.
I did this for 20 years, why couldn't I end up where they are?
Mhm.
So the belief that I had in the very beginning was where I am today is where I'm stuck forever. Where this person is, they've always been.
It's always been. Right.
Yeah, it's not true. They have time. They have more time under their belt. They have more time to their advantage. So those are the two of the big ones that jump off the page for me.
Okay. What are your plans for the future of your podcast and coaching business? And okay, but do you envision yourself continuing to make a positive impact in the lives of others?
Till the day I die.
Oh, that's a good one.
Forever, Sheila. We're going to do an episode a day, every single day.
Every day, episode a day. Oh my
episode a
goodness.
day. Yeah, for as long as humanly possible. I'm in this to impact people. I want to impact as many people as possible. I want to have the most successful podcast in the self-improvement space from a place of impact. That really is, I must just spill my water. That is what we're after. So the future is doing exactly what we're doing today, just better, with more impact, and yeah, that's it. Better with more impact forever.
All right, this is my last question, I promise.
Okay.
What are you grateful for?
Ooh. In the spirit of life, and Thanksgiving is coming up in the U.S., I am grateful to be able to do what I love every day. I'm grateful that I get to wake up and log onto the internet, and I have a roof over my head, and we have technology, and we have lights, and it's cold in New Hampshire right now, and we have heat, and I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful that I get to exist in a safe, physically safe, psychologically safe environment. Because I think we can take that for granted. It's easy to forget how valuable that is and how much that matters. And unfortunately, I've gotten to see, excuse me, behind the scenes of so many people who don't have that.
Yeah.
So it's a constant reminder to stay grateful for the things that oftentimes I may take advantage of, unfortunately.
Take for granted.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I thank you for taking the time
Of
to
course.
grace me on my second season of Sheila's Take, and I appreciate you. Can you tell my listeners how they can reach out to you, your website, and so forth?
Yeah. I always say just tune into the podcast after Sheila's episode. Check out the podcast. Next Level University, all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube as well. And then the best place to connect with me would be probably on Instagram.
Okay.
So my handle is @NeverQuitKid. You can just send me a message, questions, comments, concerns, anything you need. I'm always just a message away.
@NeverQuitKid. Oh, I like that. Okay.
That's me.
Well, be sure to catch this episode and follow Kevin @NeverQuitKid on Instagram for more transformative content. Let's embark on this incredible journey together, one story at a time. I thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Keep doing the good work that you're doing.
You know it.
Join me next time where I will continue to discuss more of today's issues. I'm your host, Sheila Dunbar. Blessings to you.